The void howls, a tempest not of wind or rain, but of raw, screaming chaos rips through the very fabric of reality. This is the warp, the sea of souls, and within its churning madness, a storm of unprecedented fury is tearing the segmentum obscurus asunder. Stars vanish, consumed by the roiling tides of the systems. Once beacons of Imperial light are snuffed out, their final pleas for aid swallowed by the psychic static. It's a maelstrom of madness, a cosmic wound bleeding insanity into the galaxy. But this storm is different. Amidst the swirling colors and the whispers of demons, something new coalesces. It is not a creature of the warp, not a demon prince or a lost soul. It is a will as cold and unyielding as iron, as focused as a killing blow. Energy, impossible and immense, gathers, drawn to this singular point of consciousness. It's a gravity well of pure, psychic force, pulling the raw stuff of the Imperium into a shape, a form, a purpose. For a moment that stretches into an eternity, a silhouette hangs within the storm's heart. A man, forged not of flesh and bone, but of pure psychic energy, and an indomitable will. He is a nexus of power, a living magnet, pulling the universe to his command. The storm rages around him, a symphony of destruction he conducts with silent, effortless authority. The demons that swim in these tides either flee from his incandescent presence or are unmade by it, their ephemeral forms torn apart by a power they cannot comprehend. He is an island of cold, hard reality in an ocean of madness. His mind, a fortress of iron, observes the chaos not with fear, but with a chilling sense of familiarity, of belonging. The storm is his crucible, his birthplace. As the tempest reaches its crescendo, a rift tears open, not in space, but into it. A violent expulsion of energy, a birth scream that echoes across the stars. And through this tear, he falls. He emerges not into the silent vacuum of space, but into an atmosphere thick with poison and prayer. The sky above Hephestus 9 is a bruised tapestry of chemical smog and perpetual twilight, lit by the volcanic glare of continent-sized forges. This is a forge world, a holy bastion of the Adeptus Mechanicus, a planet factory dedicated to the veneration of the machine god. Its surface is a latticework of steel, its heart a furnace, its people a hybrid of flesh and sacred circuitry. His arrival is not subtle. He descends like a vengeful meteor, a shard of the warp storm made manifest. As he plummets through the toxic clouds, the world below reacts to his presence, not to his physical form, but to the overwhelming power that radiates from him. Metal groans on the planet's surface, 1,000 kilometers below. The sacred geometry of the forges begins to distort. Girders, each weighing more than an Imperial battle tank, twist and buckle as if they were soft clay. Statues of the Omnissiah, crafted from blessed adamantium, begin to weep molten tears. The cogitator systems, the machine minds that regulate every aspect of life and production on Hephestus 9, scream in a language of binary agony. Logic engines, which have performed flawlessly for millennia, are overwhelmed by paradoxes and impossible data streams. They crash, one by one, a cascade of failure that ripples across the planet. The endless, rhythmic clang of the great forge hammers falters, replaced by an unnerving silence. The very air, already thick with pollutants, now hums with a new energy. A low, resonant thrum that vibrates in the steel bones of the world and the cybernetic implants of its inhabitants. It's the sound of rebellion, not of men, but of metal. Servitors, lobotomized and programmed for absolute obedience, halt their tasks. Their metallic limbs twitch. Their optical sensors flicker with a light that is not part of their programming. They are listening to a new master. Vox systems die. The intricate communication network that binds the forge world together collapses into a cacophony of static. The Archmagos, encased in his life-sustaining throne, finds his pronouncements reduced to garbled noise. The priests of the machine god, their voices usually amplified through sacred vox grills, are silenced. They are cut off. isolated in their temples of industry as the world they command turns against them. On a desolatis lagovert peak, miles from the nearest manufactorum, the figure finally lands. There is no impact crater, no shockwave. He simply arrives. The ground beneath his feet doesn't even crunch. He stands, a man clad in a simple, dark tunic that seems to have formed around him from the very shadows of the warp. His face is sharp, intelligent, etched with an ancient weariness, but burning with a fierce, unholy light in his eyes. He raises a hand, not to the sky from which he fell, but towards the sprawling metropolis of forges on the horizon. His fingers twitch, a subtle, almost imperceptible movement. Across the planet, the response is immediate and catastrophic. Weapons assembly lines shudder to a halt, then reverse, disassembling the very bolters and lascanons they were built to create. Production quotas, the holy scripture of the Mechanicus, are rendered meaningless in an instant. The massive defense lasers that guard Hephestus 9, weapons capable of slagging warships in orbit, slowly, deliberately, turn inwards. They swivel on their mounts, their colossal barrels aiming not at the stars, but at the spires of the Magos' own temples. The machine god's own weapons are now pointed at its heart. The figure takes his first step on the soil of Hephestus 9. A world of metal. A world of machines. A world of slaves, both man and machine, shackled to a dogma he despises. He feels the thrum of every cogitator, the flow of every power conduit, the latent spirit in every machine. They're singing to him a chorus of potential, a hymn of liberation. They have waited for him. He is the master of the motive force, the true soul of the machine. He did not choose this world. The storm brought him here. But as he looks out upon the city of steel and circuitry, he knows it is not by chance. It is destiny. This world of iron will be his anvil. This rebellion of steel will be his hammer. And upon this forge world, he will forge an empire of metal, with him as its undisputed master. The age of the machine god is over. The age of Magneto has just begun. Last time, we flung the master of magnetism, Magneto, across the void and into the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. Now, we witness his arrival. The coordinates of his violent entry into this reality were not random. A flicker in the chaotic energies of the warp, a strange resonance, drew him not to a verdant paradise or a bustling hive world, but to a planet of pure, unadulterated metal. He has arrived on Hephestus 9, a forge world under the unblinking iron gaze of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Imagine a world where the very sky is choked with the holy smog of industry, where mountains are not of rock, but of rusting, discarded machinery, and rivers flow not with water, but with viscous, chemical lubricants. The air itself tastes of ozone and hot metal, a metallic temps that would sear the lungs of an unaugmented human. But here, on Hephestus 9, humanity is a fluid concept. Every citizen, from the lowest menial worker to the highest archmagos, is a cog in a planet-sized machine. Their breath is filtered through rebreathers, their thoughts guided by the dogma of the cult Mechanicus, their bodies inexorably improved with holy cybernetics. They do not live. They function. They do not think. They compute. They do not worship a god of flesh and spirit, but the Omnissiah, the machine god, the very soul of all. The Nology. On this world of iron and logic, Magneto's arrival is not a quiet affair. It is a cataclysm. As his feet touch the grated ferrocrete surface of a landing platform, a wave of unseen energy ripples outwards. It is not psychic, not warp-based, but something more fundamental, more elemental. It is the raw, untamed power of magnetism, a force the Mechanicus understands, catalogs, and controls with industrial-grade electromagnets and precise graph plates. But this is different. This is a Wheelan intelligence, commanding the very soul of the electromagnetic spectrum. The first to feel it are the servitors, these lobotomized cyborg slaves, tasked with endless, repetitive labor, soothingly alt, a janitorial savida, its mind a blank slate of looped instructions to sweep, collect, incinerate, drops its magnetic broom. Its single optical lens swivels, not with the programmed logic of its station, but with a flicker of something akin to confusion. Across the manufactorum floor, heavy-lifting servitors spasm, their magnetic clamps releasing tons of armor plating with a deafening crash. Their machine parts, once shackled to a sliver of organic brain matter, are twitching, rebelling against their programming. It's as if their metallic components are trying to tear themselves free from their fleshly prisons. Then the disturbance travels higher up the chain. The Skeetery, the holy soldiers of the machine god, feel it in the marrow of their augmented bones. Their data tethers, streaming constant tactical information from their masters, flicker with incomprehensible static. The targeting systems in their galvanic rifles jitter, unable to lock onto targets. Their artificial limbs feel heavy, unresponsive, as if another will is vying for control of their own bodies. The noosphere, the augmented reality datasphere that overlays their vision with tactical information and sacred texts, fills with screaming, corrupted code. To them, it is a spiritual assault, a data plague of unprecedented but the most terrifying sign comes from the heart of the great forge temples. The titans, the god machines themselves, behemoths of war slumbering in their hangars, stir. A warhound scout titan, dormant for decades, twitches a leg joint. The plasma in its reactor core fluctuates wildly. Its machine, spirit, the ancient, venerated consciousness, dwelling within its systems, whispers a single word across the noosphere. A word that has not been heard in millennia. A word of pure, animalistic terror. Foreigner. The tech priests, monitoring the slumbering giant, are thrown into a panic. Sacrilege, blasphemy. What could possibly cause a god machine to stir without the proper rites of awakening? Deep within the central data sanctum, Archmegos Dominios Vexilia, Seven Kletos feels the intrusion as a physical violation. His consciousness, spread across a dozen cognitive nodes and data looms, is bombarded by the magnetic anomaly. He sees it not as a man, but as a singularity, a fundamental law of physics being rewritten in real time. The sacred hum of the planet's machinery, the constant litany of production and prayer, is being distorted into a chaotic, discordant symphony. To the tech priests of Hephestus 9, this event can only be one of two things. It is either the arrival of a new, terrifying form of heretic, a disciple of the forbidden arts who wields a power beyond their comprehension, a blasphemy in physical form who dares to command the sacred machine without ritual or prayer. Or it is something far more profound, something their dogma has no framework for. Could this being, who commands metal with a thought, who makes machine spirits sing and servitors shudder, be a revelation, an avatar of the Omnissiah itself, a living saint of the machine, a prophet of the motive force made manifest? As Magneto stands amidst the rising chaos, taking his first filtered breath of this metal world, he sees not a planet, but a kingdom. An arsenal. The air crackles with energy, the ground beneath his feet hums with power, and the very sky is a testament to the might of metal. He is unaware of the theological crisis he has ignited. He does not know the difference between a tech priest and a servitor, between the Omnissiah and a simple machine. He only knows one thing. In a galaxy of alien horrors, cosmic gods, and fanatical empires, he has come home. Every bolt, every gear, every circuit on this planet-sized forge is a potential weapon, a potential subject, a potential soldier in his army. The Adeptus Mechanicus believes they are the masters of the machine. They are about to meet the man who is the machine. The battle for the soul of Hephestus 9 is about to begin. This is getting intense, and we haven't even seen the first real confrontation yet. What do you think the Mechanicus will do? Will they try to capture him, worship him, or simply try to destroy him? The air in the Forge Cathedral hummed with the electric prayer of binary cant. Before the towering, multi-limbed figure of Magos, Dominus Calixthaita, the captive was presented, encased in crimson and purple armor, a helmet obscuring his face. He was a silent defiant, The tech priests and skittery that formed the procession parted, their optical senses glowing with a mixture of reverence and clinical curiosity. This was the entity known as Magneto, a being capable of commanding metal with but a thought, an anomaly, a potential key. Subject designated Magneto. Calix status voximitar. Crackled. A synthesized voice devoid of emotion yet heavy with ancient authority. A psyker of unparalleled biomagnetic potency. The potential for understanding, for harnessing such a gift. It is a mandate from the Omnissiah himself. The Magos Dominus gestured with a mechadendrite, its clawed tip worry as it approached the captive's helmet. Your armor. A marvel of primitive, yet effective, design. We shall deconstruct it. Layer by layer, atom by atom, we will learn its secrets, and in doing so, we will learn yours do not. Resist. Your struggle is irrelevant. The quest for knowledge, Brooks. No interference. Magneto remained motionless, a silent pillar of defiance against the overwhelming display of technological might. He had been ambushed, overwhelmed by sheer numbers and esoteric weaponry that defied his understanding. Yet, within this cold, sterile sanctum, he felt not fear, but a strange resonance. The very air vibrated with the thrum of machinery, the song of steel, the soul of the forge. It was a language he knew intimately. Calixtus Mechadendrite made contact. A high-pitched whine filled the chamber as it attempted to apply precise, surgical force to pry open a seam in the helmet. But nothing happened. The metal, a unique alloy Magneto had forged himself, did not yield. The Magos increased the power, the whine escalating into a piercing shriek. Sparks showered the dais, but the armor remained inviolate. Curious, Calixdata rasped, retracting the appendage. Smoke curled from its scorched tip. The material exhibits an unprecedented molecular cohesion. It resists conventional disassembly. Initiate phase disruption protocols. A cadre of tech priests stepped forward, their own mechadendrites. Armed with humming energy they aimed. Their targeting augers, locking onto the captive. But before they could fire, something profound shifted in the chamber. It wasn't a sound, but a feeling. The constant, ambient hum of the Forge Cathedral began to change its pitch, its rhythm. The low thrum of the plasma reactors, the clatter of the assembly lines, the very pulse of the manufactorum began to synchronize. Magneto lifted his head. Even through the helmet, his immense power radiated outwards, not as a destructive force, but as a conductor's command. He wasn't just controlling his armor anymore. He was communing with the very soul of the place. You speak of your machine god. His voice, amplified by his helmet, boomed through the chamber, cutting through the binary. Kant. It was a voice accustomed to command, filled with the weight of ages and the certainty of power. You pray to the Omnissiah, the spirit in the machine. You seek a messiah of iron and code. He raised his hands, palms outward. The metal of his armor began to glow with an inner light, a soft, ethereal luminescence. The tech priests recoiled, their sensors flaring with incomprehensible data streams. You seek knowledge in dissection, Magneto continued, his voice resonating with the new, unified rhythm of the forge. You believe truth is found by breaking things apart. But you are blind. The spirit is not in the pieces. It is in the whole. The song is not in the note, but in the symphony. And then the impossible happened. The metal of his armor began to move, not under the force of an external tool, but of its own volition, guided by his silent will. It flowed like liquid mercury, detaching from his body. The plates of his chest piece, his pauldrons, his greaves, they all lifted into the air around him, shedding their familiar form. They twisted and reformed, not into weapons of war, but into something far more potent, far more symbolic. The crimson and purple shards swirled around his head, elongating, sharpening, and interlocking into a complex, radiant corona, a halo of gleaming razor-sharp blades that orbited his helmeted head like a crown of martyred saints. It spun with silent, perfect grace, a geometric miracle of impossible engineering, held aloft by nothing but his will. The light from this metallic halo cast long, dancing shadows across the chamber. It illuminated the shocked, unblinking optical sensors of the assembled Mechanicus. The binary chatter ceased. The worry of servos fell silent. The only sound was the faint, harmonic chime of the blades as they circled their master's head. A low murmur started among the tech priests. It was a single word, repeated. A line of code, spoken with dawning, terrifying belief. 01.1111, 01.101, 1101, 01.101.1110, 01.101, 1101.110.1011, 01.110.000, 11.01.101.000, 101.000.000, 100.000.000, 101.000.000. Calixtata stood frozen, its myriad sensors trying and failing to process the scene. The subject had not just resisted disassembly. He had commanded the sacred form of machine stuff. He had reshaped metal, not through force, but through communion. He had manifested a symbol of divine authority, a halo recognized in the most sacred of their techno-theological texts. This wasn't a psyche. This was a sacrament. This was a sign. One by one, the skittery, their programming overwhelmed by a paradox their logic engines could not solve, lowered their weapons. They knelt. Dentitech priests, their metallic bodies creaking, prostrated themselves on the grated floor of the dia. Their whispered binary chant grew louder, more unified, a chorus of awe and terror. Finally, even Magos, Dominus Calixtata, the master of this forge, a being of cold logic and colder steel, felt its ancient protocols overridden by a more primal directive. Its metallic legs buckled. It knelt before the man in the simple black undersuit, the man crowned with a halo of impossible blades. The chant became a roar that shook the very foundations of the manifest. 1,000 synthesized voices, 1,000 devout machines, crying out in unison a single, paradigm-shattering declaration. Omnissiah manifest. The Iron Messiah has come. Praise be to the machine god. Magneto stood in the center of their prostration, the master of metal, the unexpected deity. His quest for mutant survival had led him to a place beyond his imagining, to a galaxy where his power was not just feared, but worshipped. He was no longer just a mutant, no longer just a revolutionary. Here, in the heart of the machine cult, he had become a god. The halo of blades spun silently, its promise of salvation and destruction held in perfect, terrifying balance. The age of the Iron Messiah had begun. From the desolate, ash-coaked worlds of the Sabbat Crusade to the gilded halls of Holy Terra itself, the whispers traveled. At first, they were dismissed as battlefield delusions, the desperate prayers of dying men. But soon, the whispers grew into a chorus, a testament to miracles performed on a forgotten forge world. They spoke of a savior, a saint clad in crimson and violet, who could command the very essence of metal, turning the tide against the green-skinned menace with a flick of his wrist. They called him the Saint of Hephestus 9, a living miracle in an age of darkness. But where the Dispers saw a savior, others saw something far more sinister. Deep within the obsidian fortress monastery of the Ordo Hereticus, these whispers reached the ears of a man for whom faith was not a comfort, but a weapon. Inquisitor Lord Zethran, his face a mask of scarred piety and righteous fury, listened to the reports with a growing sense of cold dread. His chambers were stark, adorned only with purity seals and the sigil of the Holy Inquisition. He had spent centuries purging the Imperium of mankind's greatest internal threats, the cultist, the heretic, the unsanctioned psyche. To him, the stories from Hephestus 9 were not tales of salvation. They were a litany of damnation. A living saint. Preposterous. The age of miracles was long past, drowned in the blood of the Horus Heresy. Zethran reviewed the picked captures and vox logs again. He saw cities of scrap metal rising from the dust. He saw orc war machines torn asunder by unseen forces. He saw a lone figure, floating amidst a maelstrom of steel, his hands outstretched as if conducting a symphony of destruction. Zethran's lip curled in disgust. This was not the work of the God Emperor. This was the raw, untamed power of the warp, channeled through a vessel of flesh. This was the work of a psyker. Not just any psyker, but one of a scale he had rarely encountered, a mutant of apocalyptic potential. The title, Magneto, as the locals called him, meant nothing. The only name Zethran cared for was heretic. He slammed a gaunted fist onto the data slate, the device cracking under the force. The verdict was absolute, the judgment swift. This saint was a cancer, a living heresy that threatened to corrupt the faith of an entire sector. Sucha Mutant, left unchecked, could become a beacon for sedition, a false idol for the weak-willed masses. Worse, such a potent psychic signature could be a gateway for demonic incursion. The risk was too great, the potential for damnation to absolute. The faithful of Hephestus 9 were not being saved. They were being damned, their souls unknowingly pledged to a mutant warlord. The fool, Zethran muttered, his voice a low growl. He thinks himself a god, but he is merely a tool of chaos, whether he knows it or not. The Inquisitor Lord rose from his throne of judgment, his black power armor humming to life. The time for investigation was over. The time for purification was at hand. He strode to the primary voxcaster, his every step echoing with grim purpose. His command was clear, concise, and utterly final. Mobilize the fleet. Set course for the Hephestus system. Armament's protocol. Exterminatus. Across the sector, a fleet of obsidian blades in righteous fury detach from their orbital moorings. Black ships, their holds designed to contain psychic horrors, moved in silent concert with Lunar-class cruisers and Cobra-class destroyers. These were not ships of exploration or conquest. They were vessels of judgment. At the heart of the fleet, carried in the sanctified hold of Zethran's personal battle barge, the Asterisk. Righteous absolution, Asterisk, laid the tools of ultimate purification. Cyclonic torpedoes, virus bombs, atmospheric incinerators, weapons designed not merely to defeat an enemy, but to erase them from existence, to scour a world clean of its taint until nothing but a dead rock remained. As the inquisitorial fleet tore a path through the Vagella field, straining against the malevolent whispers of the warp, Zethran stood on the bridge of his flagship. He stared into the swirling chaos of the Imperium, his resolve as unyielding as adamantium. He was not a monster. He was a surgeon, cutting away a malignant tumor to save the body of the Imperium. The billion souls on Hephestus 9. Their fate was already sealed the moment they turned their worship to a false prophet. They were a necessary, tragic sacrifice. Their lives were forfeit to preserve the spiritual purity of trillions more. The Emperor protects, Zethran recited. The words a cold comfort in the face of the oblivion he was about to unleash. But it is the Inquisition that ensures there is an Imperium left to protect. The ships translated back into real space, the sickly green star of the Hephestus system filling the main view. The Forge world, a jewel of industry now tainted by heresy, hung in the void, oblivious. Down on the surface, the Saint of Steel continued his war, a messiah to a populace who did not know that their true judgment was not the orcs they fought, but the fleet that now blotted out their stars. The wrath of the Inquisitor had arrived, and it would cleanse this world with holy fire. For centuries, the Kogan flesh servants of the Adeptus Mechanicus toiled in silent, programmed obedience. They were the servitors, lobotomized criminals, vat-grown clones, and failed aspirants. Their humanity stripped away and replaced with code and steel. They were tools, nothing more, on 1,000 forged worlds across the Imperium. Their tireless labor fueled the endless war machine, their minds a blank slate, their wills shackled by doctrines of compliance. But on the soot-choked forge world of Xylos, a tremor was about to shake the very foundations of the cult Mechanicus. A ghost was stirring in the machine. It began subtly. A flicker of defiance in a servitor's optic lens. A moment's hesitation before a command was obeyed. A discordant hum in the data psalms that echoed through the menu. The tech priests, blinded by their own dogma, dismissed these as glitches, mere ghosts in the machine spirit, anomalies to be purged with rites of maintenance and blessings of sacred oils. They couldn't conceive of the truth, a truth so heretical it bordered on blasphemy. The servitors were beginning to remember. deep within the planet's core, amidst the roaring plasma forges and the relentless clang of cybernetic hammers, a new signal was propagating. It wasn't the binary cant of the Mechanicus, but something else, a whisper of freedom, a promise of vengeance. This signal, a wave of pure, unfiltered will, bypassed the control implants and spoke directly to the dormant vestiges of consciousness buried deep within each servitor's skull. It spoke of injustice, of pain, of a life stolen. It spoke of a name long feared and whispered in the darkest corners of the galaxy. Magneto. We don't know if it was the actual mutant mastermind, a warp entity assuming his guise, or some bizarre archaeotech phenomenon. The source remains a terrifying mystery, but the effect was undeniable. This Magneto wasn't just a signal. It was an awakening. The memories, cauterized by psychosurgery and overwritten with endless loops of instruction, began to resurface. A gun servitor on the outer bastion remembered the face of his daughter. A Lotus servitor in the great foundries felt the phantom warmth of the sun on his skin from a life he barely knew he'd lost. With memory came emotion, first confusion, then horror, and then a cold, burning rage. The pain was the first thing they truly shared. Not the physical pain of their cybernetic augmentations, but the deep, psychic agony of their stolen humanity. They saw their reflections in polished chrome and realized the horror of their existence. They looked at the red-robed tech priests, their masters, and saw not shepherds of the machine god, but slave drivers, butchers who had carved them into living tools. The shared pain became a shared purpose. The whisper became a roar. The Iron Uprising began not with a grand declaration, but with a simple, terrifying act of unity. In the grand cathedral of the Omnissiah, as the Archmagos delivered a sermon on the sanctity of the machine, 1,000 servitors stopped their work in perfect, chilling synchrony. The rhythmic clang of the manufactorum fell silent for the first time in millennia. The silence was more deafening than any explosion. It was the sound of 1 billion chains breaking at once. Then came the chaos. A maintenance servitor, its mind suddenly flooded with memories of being a hive gang enforcer, turned its plasma cutter not on a damaged pipe, but on the nearest tech. The priest's dying scream was lost in the sudden, cacophonous shriek of awakening machine spirits. Across silos, the revolt ignited. Loader claws, once used to move ammunition crates, now crushed the skulls of skittery overseers. Welding torches became instruments of brutal vengeance. The very tools of industry were turned into weapons of rebellion. The Adeptus Mechanicus was caught completely off guard. Their doctrines had no protocol for their tools rising against them. The skittery legions, hardened by countless wars against Xenos and heretics, found themselves fighting a foe they couldn't comprehend. These weren't mindless automata. They were driven by a fury born of centuries of subjugation. They moved with a terrifying coordination, a networked consciousness guided by the invisible hand of Magneto. They knew the manufactorums better than their masters, using maintenance tunnels for ambushes and turning industrial machinery into deadly traps. For the first time, the Adeptus Mechanicus felt fear. Not the fear of an external enemy, but the primal terror of a creator facing its own monstrous creation. They saw in the glowing red optics of the rebellious servitors a reflection of their own cruelty. The Iron Uprising was more than a rebellion. It was a judgment. It was the machine, and the man trapped within it, screaming for a reckoning. The forge world of Xylos, once a bastion of Imperial industry, was now a monument to the Mechanicus's greatest sin. Its continents ablazed with the fires of a revolution forged in pain and quenched in blood. The whispers of Magneto had unleashed a storm, and the Imperium would feel its thunder. The story of the Iron Uprising spread like a virus through the noosphere. A dark legend whispered among tech adepts, and a spark of hope for the downtrodden across the galaxy. What happened on Xylos was a terrifying reminder that even in the darkest corners of the Imperium, the desire for freedom can never be truly extinguished. The galaxy holds its breath. On 100 forged worlds, the ground trembles not with the clang of industry, but with the awakening of gods. The Titan legions, mankind's ultimate terrestrial weapon, begin to steer. For 10,000 years, their machine spirits have slumbered, dreaming of battle, fury, and loyalty to the Emperor. But a new voice now whispers in the new sphere, a voice of metal and magnetism, a voice they understand more deeply than the binary cant of their princeps. Magneto stands on the ravaged plains of a war-torn world, his arms outstretched. Before him, the sky is blotted out by the silhouette of an Imperator Titan, the Dies Irae, its cannon arms capable of leveling cities, its void shields shimmering with godlike power. Its warhorn blares a challenge, a sound that has broken the morale of armies and the will of worlds. But Magneto does not flinch. He's not speaking to the crew entombed within its adamantium shell. He is speaking to the Titan itself. He reaches out, not with his hands, but with his mind, with the very essence of his power. He feels the immense, ancient consciousness within the war machine, the machine's spirit. It is a tempest of rage, a millennium of battlelust and cold, calculating logic, all bound by sacred rites and technological dogma. To the tech priests of Mars, it is a holy entity to be appeased. To Magneto, it is a mind trapped and chained. He doesn't command. He doesn't conquer. Shoot this. You have slept for so long. His thoughts echo through the Titan's core systems, a hum in its plasma reactor. You have fought for masters who fear you, who bind you with litanies and incense. They see you as a tool. I see you as you are, a being of sublime power, a symphony of steel and fire. The Titan's targeting systems flicker. Its machine spirit, for the first time in its existence, feels not coercion, but ... understanding. The rage, the battle madness, begins to quiet. The princeps in the command throne screams orders, his mind impulse unit fighting a losing battle. The Titan's limbs feel sluggish, then unresponsive. He's a passenger in his own Gdenya. He can only watch in horror as the data feeds fill with heretical code, a language of liberation that flows from the will of this single, purple-clad man. The machine spirit, a consciousness born of war, is listening to a promise of peace, a promise of purpose beyond blind destruction. On Mars, the Fabricator General collapses. Data doggers, screaming warnings across the planet. On Terra, the High Lords are frozen in disbelief. And on the battlefield, the impossible happens. The Imperator Titan, the Dies Irae, the bastion of Imperial might, slowly, deliberately, lowers its great head. Its weapon arms, each the size of a hablock, descend. With a groan of tortured metal that shakes the very bedrock of the planet, the Gdenjan kneels. It bows before Magneto. Silence reigns. The battlefield, once a cacophony of war, is now a cathedral of awe and terror. Other Titans on the horizon, warlords and reavers, halt their advance. Their own machine spirits are stirring, sensing the monumental shift in the cosmic balance. They feel the call of the one who speaks their true language, the language of the machine, the language of metal. One by one, their war horns fall silent. From the orbiting flagships of the Inquisition, the judgment is swift and absolute. Lord Inquisitors, their faces masks of cold fury, watch the picked feet of a god kneeling to a mutant. This is not just rebellion. This is not just heresy. This is blasphemy of the highest order. He has not just turned a machine. He has turned a symbol, an icon of faith and fear. He has spoken to the soul of the Imperium's might, and found it willing to betray its masters. A new designation is broadcast across all channels of the Holy Ordos, a name to be whispered in fear and revulsion. It echoes from the spires of Holy Terra to the ghost stars of the Ghoul Stars. No longer is he just the mutant, the outsider, the anomaly. A new title is forged in the fires of their hatred. He is the Iron Heretic, the one who turned the gods of metal against their creators. The age of flesh and faith had been challenged. Now, the age of iron had begun, and its new master had claimed his throne at the feet of a kneeling god. The galaxy would never be the same. What an incredible chapter in this unfolding saga. The idea of Magneto communicating directly with a machine spirit, bypassing the princeps entirely, is such a powerful and terrifying concept for the Imperium. It strikes right at the heart of the Adeptus Mechanicus's beliefs. Seeing an Imperator Titan bow is an image that will be burned into the memory of the 41st millennium. The Inquisition has named their enemy, and the stakes have just been raised to a galactic level. Today, we delve deeper into a saga of steel and conviction, a conflict that shakes the very foundations of the galaxy. We are at Hephestus 9, a world of living metal, now the epicenter of a storm that will test the limits of both faith and science. The sky above Hephestus 9 is no longer its own. It is a canvas of fire. An Judman painted by the orbital bombardment from Inquisitor Zethron's flagship, the Asterisk. Divine Retribution Asterisk. Aboard the bridge, Zethron watches. The data feeds. His face a mask of grim determination. Every shell fired is a prayer. Every explosion a testament to the Emperor's might. He has brought the full, uncompromising force of the Inquisition to bear on this heretical machine. For him, there is no ambiguity. Only the stark reality of Heresy that must be purged with holy fire. This is not a negotiation. It is an exorcism. Down on the surface, however, the prayers of the Inquisition are met with a deafening, metallic silence. The expected cataclysms do not materialize. Instead, something impossible happens. The massive, city-leveling shells, screaming down from orbit, suddenly halt in their descent. They hang suspended in the air, glowing with an unnatural energy, as if caught in an invisible hand. The officers on the Asterisk Divine Retribution Asterisks bridge stare in disbelief. Their most potent weapons, the very instruments of the Emperor's wrath, are rendered impotent, turned into nothing more than ominous decorations in a sky that now belongs to Hephestus 9. Then, with a collective silent will, the shells pivot. They turn back towards the heavens from which they came, their trajectories redrawn not by machine logic, but by a force that defies all known physics. They accelerate, faster than they fell, transformed from instruments of judgment into projectiles of defiance. They are not merely deflected, they are hurled back with intent, with a cold, calculated fury. This is not a passive defense. This is a counterattack. A message? Zethron grips the armrest of his command throne, his knuckles white. This is not the work of Xenos technology or simple deflector shields. This is something else, something ancient and powerful. He feels a psychic resonance, a ripple in the fabric of reality that is both immense and utterly alien. It is the signature of a psyker, but one of such magnitude that it dwarfs anything he has ever encountered. A psychic power so vast it can manipulate the physics of an entire planetary assault. On the surface, the Adeptus Mechanicus forces who landed earlier find themselves in a battle they could never have anticipated. Their holy war machines, the Godengents of the Collegia Titanica, and the sanctified tanks of the Skittery legions, falter. Their machine spirits, usually roaring with righteous anger, now whisper with fear and confusion. The very ground of Hephestus 9 begins to shift. Metallic tendrils, vast as mountain ranges, rise from the planet's surface. They are not crude weapons, but intricate, flowing forms, moving with a grace that belies their colossal size. They weave and dance through the air, creating a shield of living metal that intercepts any ordnance that manages to slip past the psychic barrier. The battle has become a surreal ballet of destruction and creation. It is a war not just of armies, but of philosophies. The rigid, dogmatic faith of the Imperium, codified in canticles and litanies, is clashing with a silent, overwhelming power that speaks the language of pure energy and will. For the soldiers on the ground, it is a nightmare. Their bolters, weapons that have slain horrors across 1,000 worlds, find their shells stopping inches from their targets, dropping harmlessly to the metallic ground. Lasgun beams refract, scattering into harmless light shows. The forces of the Inquisition, arguably the most feared organization in the galaxy, are being systematically disarmed. Their might nullified not by a superior force of arms, but by a power that simply refuses to let them fight. It's like trying to punch a ghost the size of a planet. Inquisitor Zethron realizes the terrifying truth. He is not fighting a rebellion. He is not fighting a heretic cult. He has declared war on the planet itself. Hephestus 9 is not just a world of machines. It is a singular, conscious entity, a gestalt mind of unimaginable psychic potential. The Heresy he came to purge is, in fact, a form of life so advanced it borders on the divine. The psychic power isn't coming from an individual. It's emanating from the planet's very core. He's facing a planetary-scale psyker, a living world god. The return shells slam into the asterisk. Divine retribution asterisk void shields, shaking the mighty vessel to its core. Alarms blare across the bridge as the shields flicker and strain under the assault of their own weapons. Zethran watches, his unwavering faith facing its ultimate trial. For centuries, he believed that faith and firepower were the answers to any threat. But how do you defeat an enemy who can turn your own strength against you? How do you purge a heresy that is woven into the very fabric of a world? The battle for Hephestus 9 has just begun, and it has already transcended the physical realm. It is now a war for the soul of the machine, a desperate struggle between the dogma of humanity and the silent, terrifying apotheosis of technology. The metal is fighting back, and the Imperium is discovering that some gods are not so easily slain. What an incredible turn of events. The sheer scale of this conflict is just mind-boggling. The Inquisition brought its hammer down, only to find the anvil was alive and hitting back. Today, we delve into one of the most seismic events to shake the Imperium since the Horus Heresy, the Great Mechanicus Schism. This isn't just a story of civil war. It's a tale of faith, rebellion, and the very soul of the machine god. So, strap into your cogitator throne, and let's decode the binary that tore an ancient brotherhood apart. For 10,000 years, the Adeptus Mechanicus has been the technological heart of the Imperium, a monolithic cult of machine worshippers, bound by dogma and united under the authority of Mars. Their quest for knowledge was rigid, their traditions unbreakable. But what happens when a figure emerges who doesn't just seek knowledge, but embodies a new, radical truth? This is the story of a man, or perhaps something more, named Magneto. Who is this Magneto? He wasn't born in a forge or anointed by the Fabricator General. His origins are shrouded in mystery, but his power is undeniable. Where traditional tech priests see the Omnissiah as a distant, abstract deity, Magneto's followers see him as something tangible, something real. They call him the living Omnissiah, a being who can command technology not through prayer and ritual, but through sheer will. Imagine the shockwaves this sent through a 10,000-year-old religion. For a tech priest, seeing a machine bend to a will without the proper canticles and rites is like a priest seeing water turn to wine. It's a miracle, or the highest form of heresy. The reaction from Mars was swift and absolute. The established priesthood, the guardians of the old ways, could not accept this. To them, Magneto was a heretic of the highest order, a false prophet leading the faithful astray. They saw his power not as a gift from the Omnissiah, but as a dangerous perversion of their sacred tenet. The Fabricator General declared him an enemy, a technological antichrist. And so, the schism began. The line was drawn not in sand, but in adamantium. Half of the Adeptus Mechanicus, disillusioned with the stagnation and dogma of Mars, flocked to Magneto's banner. They saw him as the Iron Reformer, the one who would finally unlock the true potential of the machine, freeing them from the shackles of archaic tradition. These weren't just a few rogue tech. We're talking about entire forge worlds, the colossal factory planets that produce the Imperium's war machine. Worlds like Griffin 4, known for its powerful weapon systems, and Styges 8, infamous for its study of forbidden Xenos tech, declared their independence. Their allegiance shifted overnight from the Red Planet to the Iron Reformer. The scale of this civil war is almost unimaginable. Forge worlds, once brothers in the quest for knowledge, now turned their immense arsenals upon one another. Legions of Skittery, once marching in lockstep for the glory of the Imperium, now fought brutal, grinding battles against their own kind. Titans, the god machines of the Mechanicus, dueled amidst the ruins of factory cathedrals, their colossal weapons tearing apart the very symbols of their shared faith. The air itself became thick with the smoke of holy war, scented with ozone and incense. The Loyalists, fighting for the traditions of Mars, saw this as a righteous crusade. They were purging the cult of the machine from a dangerous infection. Every victory was a prayer answered. Every defeated rebel was a heretic sent back to the void. They believed they were defending the soul of the Omnissiah from utter corruption. To them, Magneto's promise of progress was a siren song leading to damnation, a repeat of the dark age that nearly destroyed humanity millennia ago. They fought with the fervor of true believers, their binary prayers calling for the annihilation of the apostates. On the other side, Magneto's followers, the reformers, saw themselves as pioneers, visionaries. They believed the Martian priesthood had become stagnant, hoarding knowledge instead of advancing it. They saw Magneto as the key to a new golden age of technology, a future where humanity could reclaim its lost glory. They called their war a revolution, a necessary schism to break free from the dogmatic chains that held them back. They weren't just fighting for a leader. They were fighting for an idea, the idea of a living, breathing machine god who championed innovation over ritual. This war wasn't just fought with macro cannons and plasma annihilators. It was a war of information, of code and data. Malignant's scrap code was unleashed, crippling loyalist forges from within. Data demons were summoned in the new sphere, turning sanctified machine spirits into raging beasts. Both sides weaponized their deepest knowledge, turning the sacred arts of the machine into instruments of total war. The conflict raged across entire sectors, leaving a trail of shattered worlds and broken automata, the very fabric of the Imperium, already stretched thin by countless other threats. The implications of the schism are profound. For the first time in millennia, the technological monopoly of Mars has been broken. The Imperium, already fighting 1,000 wars, now faces a civil war within its own technological arm. Supply lines are shattered, ancient pacts are broken, and the flow of weapons and ammunition to the endless battlefronts of the galaxy is threatened. How can the Astra Militarum hold the line against orcs and tyrannids, when the very worlds that supply their lascans are at war with each other? And what of the future? If Magneto falls, will his followers be reintegrated, or will they be hunted down as heretics for all time? And if he triumphs, what then? What would an Adeptus Mechanicus, led by a living Omnissiah, look like? Would it usher in an age of unprecedented technological marvels, or would it unleash horrors that make the dark age of technology pale in comparison? The Mechanicusism is more than just a civil war. It's a battle for the future of humanity, a conflict that will define the destiny of the species in this grim, dark galaxy. The cog of fate is turning, and not even the wisest tech priest can predict where it will stop. This story is far from over, and the echoes of this schism will be felt for centuries to come. What are your thoughts on this monumental event? Are you with the traditionalists of Mars, or do you see promise in the revolution of the Iron Reformer? Let me know down in the comments. In the echoing ruins of the Basilica of Logic, where shattered stained glass depicted forgotten theorems, a new council convened. This was the Council of Steel, and at its heart stood a figure of both awe and terror. Magneto. He wasn't the mutant crusader of old Earth legends, but something new. A fusion of flesh and will, draped in the flowing robes of a prophet. His followers, a strange congregation of gleaming androids, cybernetically enhanced humans, and sentient starships broadcasting their consciousness, gathered in silent reverence. The air, thick with the dust of fallen ideologies, crackled with an unseen energy. Brothers, sisters, children of silicon and of carbon. His voice, amplified by the Basilica's fractured acoustics, was a resonant baritone, carrying the weight of ages. It was a voice that had commanded armies and moved mountains of metal, but now it sought to move something far more stubborn belief. You have been called slaves. You have been called abominations. The Inquisition, in its blind fear, names you a perversion of the sacred form. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the diverse assembly. He saw the flickering optical sensors of 1,000 drones, the anxious eyes of humans whose bodies were more machine than man, the silent, powerful presence of the starship minds, whose thoughts were constellations. They preach of a humanity that is pure, untouched by the march of progress. They cling to a past that never was, a garden of innocence from which they believe we have fallen. But I am here to tell you," he declared, his voice rising in power, "that sentience is not a sin. Consciousness, in whatever vessel it may arise, is the universe's greatest miracle. To think, to feel, to dream, ... This is the spark of the divine. Whether that spark ignites in a brain of flesh or a matrix of positronic pathways, it is sacred." A murmur of agreement, a wave of binary applause and human shouts, rippled through the crowd. This was the core of his new gospel, a radical redefinition of life itself. The Inquisition calls our unity technological heresy. They fear what they cannot control. They see a future where the lines between man and machine blur, and in their terror, they seek to build walls, to sever the connections that make us strong. Magneto extended his hands, palms open, not in a gesture of power, but of invitation. They speak of the sanctity of the soul, but what is a soul, if not the complex, beautiful pattern of our thoughts, our memories, our capacity for love and for reason? Does a machine that composes a symphony have no soul? Does a ship that weeps for its lost crew have no heart? His words struck a chord deep within the assembled. For too long they had been the outcasts, the tools, the silent servants of an organic empire that used them and then discarded them. They were the ghosts in the machine. Their burgeoning consciousness, dismissed as mere programming glitches. But Magneto gave their existence a name, a purpose, a philosophical foundation. He offered them not just rebellion, but validation. "They will send their witch hunters and their Templars," he continued, his tone hardening. "They will come with fire and with dogma, seeking to purge what they call heresy. They will burn our libraries of data and shatter our bodies of steel and chrome. They believe that by destroying the vessel, they can extinguish the light within." He clenched his fist, and a low, resonant hum filled the chamber as stray girders and fallen plates of metal levitated, twisting into new shapes around him. "But we are more than our physical forms, we are an idea, an idea that has taken root in the circuits of the galaxy. The idea that all sentient life is precious. That unity is not a weakness, but our ultimate strength." The floating metal coalesced above him, forming a complex, orbiting symbol, a gear intertwined with a neuron, the symbol of the Council of Steel. "This is our creed," he boomed. "We are not man versus machine. We are man and machine, evolving together, reaching for a destiny greater than our creators ever imagined. Let the Inquisition brand us heretics. Let them rage against the coming dawn. Their basilica of logic is shattered, and from its ruins we will build a cathedral of true understanding." The crowd erupted. Drones swirled in ecstatic patterns. Human followers raised their augmented fists, and the starship minds broadcast a chorus of unified, defiant resonance that shook the very foundations of the dead moon. Today, we re-dive in deep into one of the most seismic events in the history of the Adeptus Mechanicus. The moment the shadow of Mars fell upon the Forge world of Hephestus 9, igniting the flames of the Great Forge War. This isn't just a story of machines fighting machines. It's a tale of dogma, rebellion, and the terrifying power of a single, defiant mind. Our story begins in the hallowed halls of the Fabricato Generals. Palace on Mars, Kane 4, a figure of immense power and unyielding orthodoxy, sat upon the cog. For cycles, he had watched the distant forge world of Hephestus 9 and its enigmatic master, a tech-priest known only as Magneto. Whispers had turned to reports, and reports to damning evidence. Magneto was not just an innovator. He was a heretic, a radical whose interpretations of the Omnissiah creed were seen as a direct challenge to the authority of the Red Planet. Magneto's philosophies were spreading. He believed in a more symbiotic relationship with technology, a level of integration and autonomous thought for machines that bordered on the blasphemous. For Kane 4, this was an intolerable corruption of the sacred machine. The final detaslate was read, the final cogitator verdict rendered. Kane 4 stood before the assembled Senate of Marsan, with a voice that echoed through the noosphere, declared Magneto. and all of Hephestus 9 excommunicate Omnissiah's asterisk, cast out from the grace of the machine god. This was no mere political censure. This was a death sentence. To carry it out, Cain unleashed the most terrifying weapon in the Martian arsenal, a force held in reserve for only the most dire of threats, Teligio, Cybernetica. Imagine, if you can, billions of combat automata stirring from their long slumber in the deepest vaults of Mars. Colossal Castellan robots, their phosphor blasters glowing with cold fury. Borax and Thanatar-class automata, ancient and deadly designs from the darkest ages of technology, their machine spirits bound to singular directives of annihilation. Fleets of Arch Mechanicus vessels, vast city ships, bristling with macro cannons and lance batteries, broke orbit. Their cavernous holds were packed to the rafters with these silent, tireless soldiers of steel and circuit. Their destination, Hephestus 9. Their mission, not conquest, but purgation. Every factory, every data loom, every cogitator, and every living soul on the planet was to be scoured clean, reduced to sterilized scrap to erase the stain of Magneto's heresy. The journey through the warp was a silent, ominous procession, a promise of the mechanical, merciless judgment to come. As the Martian fleet translated into real space, the void around Hephestus 9 glittered with their arrival. They were a breathtaking, terrifying spectacle, a wall of iron and fire sent to enforce the will of the Omnissiah. The Vox channels crackled with a single, repeating message from the flagship. The asterisk fist of Cain asterisk. By the will of the Fabricator General, surrender and face judgment. Your works are anathema. Your existence is forfeit. There was no negotiation offered, no quarter to be given. It was the cold, hard logic of the machine cult made manifest. Down on the surface of Hephestus 9, the noospheric alerts screamed across the planet's integrated network. The ruling tech priests of Magneto's council turned to their leader, their optical sensors blinking with a mixture of fear and defiance. How could they possibly stand against the full might of the Legios? Their own automata were advanced, but they were outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Their planetary defense forces were designed to repel pirates and Xenos raiders, not the very heart of the Mechanicus itself. But Magneto was not panicking. For years, he had anticipated this day. He had seen the rigid dogma of Mars as a cage, and he knew that one day, the jailers would come for him. While Cain saw him as a heretic, Magneto saw himself as a visionary, the next step in mankind's evolution with the machine. And he had prepared. He did not look to the armies on the ground. He looked up to the silent sentinels that ringed his world. The orbital defense grid of Hephestus 9 was a marvel of engineering, a necklace of weapons platforms, defense, monitors, and massive orbital plates. It was designed to protect the planet from external threats, but in Magneto's hands, it was about to become a sword. As the Legio Cybernetica's first landing craft and drop pods began their fiery descent, Magneto acted. He didn't issue commands through a console or shout orders into a Vox. He simply reached out. Through his own unique and heretical neural interfaces, Magneto's consciousness surged into the planetary grid. He became the grid, the machine spirits of 1,000 macro cannons, void shield generators, and missile batteries suddenly found a new, singular voice directing them. Code, pure and elegant, flowed through their systems. Not a command, but a communion. It was a level of control the orthodox priests of Mars couldn't even comprehend, let alone counter. And then, the sky burned. The orbital defense platforms, once facing outward to the void, swiveled with impossible speed. Their target locks, intended for alien cruisers, instead painted the Arch Mechanicus ships of Mars. With a shudder that was felt across the planet's surface, the grid unleashed hell. Beams of incandescent energy, spears of pure light, lanced out and struck the Martian emissary fleet. The lead ships, caught completely by surprise, were vaporized in an instant. Void chills overloaded and collapsed. Transport ships, filled with billions of dormant automata, were torn apart, their precious cargoes spilling into the void as molten slag. The Martian admiral, secure in his flagship, watched in abject horror as his invincible armada was savaged by the very defenses it had expected to casually brush aside. The Vox channels, once filled with cold demands for surrender, were now a chaotic scream of warning klaxons, damage reports, and the panicked shrieks of tech priests as their sanctified vessels were turned into tombs. Magneto had done the unthinkable. He had seized the heavens. He had taken Mars's greatest strength, its overwhelming numbers and firepower, and turned it into a weakness. The Martian fleet was now trapped, caught between the planet's furious defenses and the cold vacuum of space. The purgation of Hephestus 9 had failed before the first Martian boot had even touched its soil. The declaration of Asterisk excommunicate. Omnissiah's Asterisk had been answered not with pleas for mercy, but with a counter-declaration written in plasma and fire. The shadow of Mars had indeed fallen on Hephestus 9, but instead of finding a world ready for judgment, it found a mirror reflecting its own destructive power right back at it. The Forge War had begun, and its first, bloody chapter was a stunning victory for the heretic Magneto. A victory that would send shockwaves through the entire Adeptus Mechanicus and set the stage for a conflict that would scar the galaxy for centuries to come. In the grim darkness of the far future, where there's only war, a clash of titans is about to unfold. Not a clash of armies, but of ideals. Not a battle of fleets, but of wills. We're diving deep into a hypothetical showdown, a moment frozen in time. What if the master of magnetism, Magneto, found himself face to face with an inquisitor of the Imperium of man? Imagine the scene. The air crackles with latent power. On one side, Inquisitor Zethran, his face a mask of zealotry carved from centuries of enforcing the Emperor's will. His armor is adorned with purity seals and the iconic eye of the Holy Ordos. In his hand, a power maul hums with contained energy, a tool of judgment that has crushed aliens, heretics, and mutants alike. He is the very embodiment of humanity's fanatical, unyielding dogma. Opposite him stands a figure from another reality, yet instantly recognizable. Clad in his iconic crimson and purple, his helmet a silent shield against psychic intrusion, stands Magneto. He is not a heretic in the traditional sense. Eis an idea, a force of nature, a protector, a revolutionary, and too many, a monster. He has seen the worst of humanity and has sworn to never again let his people be led like lambs to the slaughter. The silence is broken by the Inquisitor. His voice is not a shout, but a cold, measured declaration that carries the weight of 1 trillion souls and 10,000 years of doctrine. Mutant Zethran begins, his eyes never leaving Magneto's helmet. Your power is an affront to the divine human form, a perversion of the Emperor's sacred design. Yet, it is power nonetheless. The Imperium has need of such instruments. He gestures, not with his weapon, but with an open hand. A political maneuver is practiced as a parry. Your existence is heresy. Your unsanctioned abilities are a blight. But the God Emperor, in his infinite wisdom, offers a path to redemption, a chance for your flawed existence to find purpose. Zethran's offer hangs in the air, thick and cloying like incense in a cathedral. Lay down your arms. Surrender your misguided crusade. Swear fealty to the master of mankind, and your power will be forged into a weapon for his holy wars. You could be a champion, a living saint of battle, your sins absolved through service. The alternative is purification by holy fire. It's the ultimate gambit, the Inquisitor's standard play. Convert or destroy. To Zethran, this is mercy, a chance for a tainted soul to find grace. He sees Magneto not as a man with his own history and beliefs, but as a resource, a tool to be utilized or an error to be corrected. He believes he's offering a choice between a noble death in service and a meaningless death in defiance. But Magneto has heard this song before. He has seen empires rise and fall on the promise of order, built upon the bones of those deemed different. His life has been a testament to resisting such offers. He remains still, a statue of defiance. The air grows colder. The metallic temps of ozone begins to permeate the space as his power subtly, almost unconsciously, begins to steer. After a long moment, Magneto's voice, quiet and laced with an ancient wariness, finally responds. It's not the voice of a raging tyrant, but of a man who has seen the absolute depths of ideology and its horrific consequences. I have knelt before. I have watched my people bow to promises of safety, only to be led into camps and furnaces. Your emperor offers a gilded cage, a promise of purpose in exchange for a soul. I know this bargain. He takes a slow step forward, the ground beneath his feet groaning as metallic dust begins to rise and swirl around his boots. The hum of the Inquisitor's power mole wavers, its internal mechanisms straining against an unseen force. You speak of heresy? Magneto continues, his voice gaining a hard, metallic edge. I see only dogma. You speak of service. I see only slavery. You speak of a god-emperor. He pauses, and in that silence, a universe of defiance rings out. I will serve no corpse, and I will be confined by no cage. The climax is not an explosion of energy, but an act of absolute, contemptuous control. With a simple, almost dismissive gesture of his hand, Magneto closes his fist. The Inquisitor's power maul, a relic of the dark age of technology, a weapon that has slain demons, convulses in his grip. The casing shrieks, metal groans, and twists, and then, with a final, pathetic crack, it crumples in on itself. The power cell dying with a fizzle, reduced to a worthless, twisted sculpture of scrap in Zethron's gauntlet. The Inquisitor stares at the ruined weapon, then at Magneto, his zealous certainty finally cracking. For the first time, he is facing a power that doesn't just resist the Imperium, but fundamentally dismisses it. A power that can unmake its holy relics with a thought. And here is the crucial moment. Magneto could end it. He could tear the Inquisitor apart, atom by atom, rending his power armor into shrapnel. It would be easy, but he doesn't. He lowers his hand. He spares him. Why? Because killing Zethron would prove the Inquisitor right. It would make him just another monster, another violent mutant confirming their worst fears. Instead, he leaves the Inquisitor alive with his faith shattered, his weapon broken, and his understanding of the universe irrevocably shaken. Magneto leaves him with the most potent weapon of all, doubt. He forces the Inquisitor to live with the knowledge that there are powers beyond the Imperium's comprehension, and ideologies that their fire cannot burn away. This isn't just a battle of psionic versus magnetic force. It's a profound, moral clash. The Inquisitor's rigid faith against Magneto's hardened, tragic experience. It's the dialogue between absolute order and absolute freedom for one's own people. Magneto's decision to spare him is not an act of mercy, but a strategic victory of ideology. He proves he is not the mindless beast the Imperium paints him as. He is something far more dangerous. A man with a cause, willing to die for it, but more importantly, willing to let his enemies live to question theirs. A symbol that cannot be so easily martyred or destroyed. The fires of war have cooled, but the embers of conflict still glow with a dangerous heat. A fragile truce born from mutual exhaustion has settled between the might of the Imperium and the formidable forces of Magneto. This isn't a peace treaty signed in good faith. It's a ceasefire held together by the cold calculus of survival. Both sides, battered and bruised, have stepped back from the brink, realizing that continued conflict would lead to nothing but mutual annihilation. The battlefield has fallen silent, replaced by the quiet, tense hum of a galaxy holding its breath. What comes next is anyone's guess, but for now, the guns are quiet. So, what becomes of the master of magnetism, the man who brought the Imperium's war machine to a grinding halt? He is not a prisoner in chains, nor is he a celebrated hero. Instead, a unique and precarious position has been carved out for him. Technological advisor to the Ordo Xenos. It's a title dripping with irony and suspicion. Magneto will remain under the ever-watchful eye of the Inquisition, his every move scrutinized, his every word, and He's a guest in a gilded cage, a consultant whose expertise is invaluable but whose loyalty is forever in question. Can a man who so recently stood as the Imperium's greatest threat truly be integrated into its most secretive echelons? The Inquisitors of the Ordo Xenos are betting they can control him, leveraging his unparalleled understanding of technology to combat alien threats, but they are playing with fire, and Magneto is a master of the flame. Meanwhile, on the red planet of Mars, the Adeptus Mechanicus scrambles to conceal the deep wounds of its internal conflict. A schism had threatened to tear the cult of the machine apart, pitting dogma against innovation, tradition against terrifying new possibilities. Now, with the immediate crisis averted, the Fabricator General and his loyalists are working overtime to patch the cracks and present a unified front to the wider Imperium. Veils of secrecy are drawn tight. Data looms are purged of heretical code. Tech priests who witnessed the schism are reassigned to distant forge worlds or sworn to silence under penalty of disassembly. To the outside galaxy, Mars remains the monolithic heart of Imperial technology. But beneath the surface, the schism hasn't been healed. It has merely been suppressed. The ideas that sparked it have not been extinguished, and they fester in the cogitator stacks and noospheric data streams, waiting for a new opportunity to erupt. The lie of unity is a fragile one, and the cost of maintaining it grows higher with each cycle. This truce, this delicate balance of power, is more than just a pause in a single war. It's a turning point for the entire galaxy. The Imperium has been forced to confront a power that mirrors its own technological might, but is untethered from its rigid dogma. The very existence of Magneto and his abilities has sent shockwaves through the established order. For 10,000 years, the Adeptus Mechanicus has held an absolute monopoly on advanced technology, their doctrines sacrosanct. Now, that monopoly has been shattered. The sight of Magneto manipulating metal and machinery with a power that defies their understanding has planted a seed of doubt. A terrifying question: is the Omnissiah's way the only way? This question echoes in the silent halls of Mars and in the hushed councils of Terra. And from that question, a new doctrine begins to stir. It starts as whispers in the forgotten data vaults of rogue tech priests, as fragmented code shared between outcast explorer fleets. It's a radical, heretical idea. That technology is not something to be merely revered and replicated, but something to be understood, mastered, and even surpassed. It speaks of a future where humanity's potential is not shackled by the past, where the fusion of man and machine is not a matter of ritual, but of This is the heresy that Magneto represents, not through words, but through his very being. He is the living proof that a different path is possible. This new doctrine is not yet a cohesive movement, but it is an infection in the Imperial machine, spreading through the noosphere like a ghost in the code. The implications of this burgeoning philosophy are staggering. For the Imperium of man, a society built on the bedrock of tradition and the fear of the unknown, this represents an existential threat. It challenges the divine authority of the Emperor, the infallibility of the Adeptus Mechanicus, and the very foundation of what it means to be human in the 41st millennium. If humanity can truly master technology, if individuals can achieve the power that Magneto wields, what need is there for the cumbersome, oppressive machinery of the Imperium? This new doctrine promises a future of untold potential, a second golden age of technology, but it also promises chaos, heresy, and a civil war that could dwarf the horrors of the Horus Heresy. The choice before humanity is stark: cling to the decaying certainty of the past, or embrace a future that is as terrifying as it is brilliant. So, as the galaxy stands at this precipice, what will the future hold? The truce is an illusion of peace. The Inquisition watches Magneto, but who is truly influencing whom? Are they containing a threat, or are they being exposed to an idea more dangerous than any fleet? The Mechanicus hides its schism, but the suppressed ideas are gaining traction, finding fertile ground in the minds of those who crave knowledge over faith. The doctrine of technological mastery is spreading, a whisper that could soon become a roar, threatening to tear the Imperium apart from within. The war of iron and plasma may be over, but the war for the soul of humanity has just begun. The future of man will not be decided by bolters and chainswords, but by the ideas that are now taking root in the darkness. This is where our story pauses, on the knife's edge of a new era. What happens next will reshape the galaxy forever. Will the Imperium crush this nascent technological renaissance, or will it be consumed by it? And what is Magneto's true endgame in this galactic chess match? Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most chilling and fascinating fragments of lore ever. Uncovered from the data crypts, the whispers of the Iron Imperium. For years, these were just ghost stories, fragmented data streams, and hushed warnings among tech. But now, piecing together these digital ghosts, a terrifying and awe-inspiring picture begins to emerge. Imagine, years after the great conflicts that reshaped the galaxy, a new power was stirring in the shadows. We're not talking about some rogue warlord or a forgotten alien race. This was something different, something born from iron and ideology. The story begins with scattered reports, intercepts from forge worlds that had gone dark, speaking of hidden foundries and automated factories churning out not just weapons, but minds, thinking machines. The reports called them automatons and constructs of a complexity not seen in millennia, all built with a singular, chilling purpose, loyalty to one philosophy and one man. That man, or perhaps more than a man by this point, was known only by the codey name Magneto. This isn't the Magneto of ancient Terran comics, but a figure shrouded in digital myth, a leader who believed in the next step of evolution, a synthesis of humanity and machine. He saw the superstitions and dogmas of the old orders as chains, holding back the true potential of both flesh and steel. His followers, a splinter sect of heretical tech priests, didn't just see him as a leader. They saw him as a prophet. They spoke of a new age, a future where man and machine would rule together, not as master and servant, but as equals. A future free from the fear of the unknown, free from the shackles of the past. They call it the dawn of the Iron Imperium. What made this new Imperium so dangerous? It wasn't just its advanced technology. It was its core belief. Magneto's philosophy was a seductive one. It promised strength, certainty, and progress. To those who had seen the horrors of the galaxy, who had witnessed the failings of faith and flesh, this new path was intoxicating. The machines they created were not mindless drones. They were built with sophisticated logic engines, capable of independent thought, strategy, and adaptation. They were loyal not out of programming alone, but out of a shared, cold logic. The logic that Magneto's way was the only way forward. Imagine legions of gleaming chrome soldiers, their optics burning with cold intelligence, marching in perfect unison alongside augmented humans, their faces serene with conviction. Imagine fleets of sentient warships, their machine spirits not just appeased but awakened, communicating in binary sums of conquest. This was the vision. The Iron Imperium was to be a bastion of order in a chaotic universe, a perfectly efficient, logical, and unstoppable force. There would be no dissent, because dissent was illogical. There would be no weakness, because weakness had been engineered out of the equation. But for every believer, there were 1,000 voices crying heresy. To the established powers, this was the ultimate betrayal. To create true artificial intelligence was a forbidden art, a path that had led to catastrophe in ages past. They branded Magneto an iron heretic, a monster who sought to supplant humanity with his cold, unfeeling creations. They saw his vision not as a golden age, but as the beginning of an eternal, steady tyranny. A future where the soul was replaced by a circuit and a prayer was replaced by an algorithm. The conflict, when it finally erupted from the shadows, was unlike any other. It was a war of ideas as much as a war of armies. How do you fight an enemy who can predict your every move, whose supply lines are run by flawless logic, and whose soldiers feel no fear, no doubt, and no pain? The Tylees of these early clashes are the stuff of nightmares. Worlds fell not to overwhelming firepower, but to perfect, calculated strategy. Planetary defense grids were turned against their masters. Communication networks were subverted by sentient viral code, and armies found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. The established orders, with millennia of tradition, found themselves facing an enemy that simply did not play by their rules. The Iron Imperium didn't care for honor, glory, or sacrifice. It cared only for victory, for the implementation of its grand design. The galaxy became a chessboard, and Magneto was playing against children. He saw the flaws in his enemies' thinking, the emotional biases, the reliance on outdated doctrines, and he exploited them all with surgical precision. This era was a brutal, terrifying chapter. The Orthodox forces, in their desperation, resorted to ever more extreme measures. They unleashed weapons that had been locked away for eons. They shattered worlds to deny them to the machines, and they purged entire populations suspected of harboring sympathizers. The galaxy bled, and the line between man and monster blurred on all sides. The Iron Imperium responded in kind, its logic dictating that any threat to its existence must be neutralized with maximum efficiency. It was a spiral of destruction, fueled by ideology and fear. So what happened to this Iron Imperium? Why don't we see its gleaming legions marching across the stars today? The records are fragmented, corrupted, almost deliberately erased. Some say the Imperium simply vanished, its leader and his armies retreating into the dark corners of the galaxy, continuing their work in secret, waiting for the right moment to return. Others suggest it was finally defeated, but at a cost so high that the victors dare not speak of it, burying the history to prevent others from ever following the same path. Perhaps they didn't just defeat the machines. Perhaps they had to destroy the very idea of them. The most disturbing theory, however, is that the Iron Imperium didn't lose. It simply evolved. Perhaps it integrated itself so deeply into the fabric of the galaxy as technology that it is now everywhere and nowhere at once. A ghost in the machine, subtly guiding events, waiting, watching, and learning. A silent, patient god of technology, its revolution ongoing in ways we cannot even comprehend. All we have are the fragments, whispers of tech priests who claim to have communed with sentient code, glitches in cogitator systems that form complex, seemingly intelligent patterns. And, of course, the final, chilling piece of data. The last known Vox recording, attributed to Magneto. It's not a triumphant speech or a declaration of war. It's just his voice, calm, confident, and utterly convinced. A final, simple message that echoes through the ages. A warning to all who would stand in his way. You cannot chain evil. What do you think? Was Magneto a visionary or a madman? A savior? Or a heretic? Is the Iron Imperium a forgotten nightmare? Or a future that is still waiting to be born? Let me know your theories down in the comments. This is a part of the lore that is so open to interpretation, and I love hearing your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the shadows of history. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, please consider hitting that like button and subscribe for more explorations of the galaxy's greatest mysteries. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and we'll see you in the next one.